Hi. I don't really know how to start my first proper YouTube video. I mean, so many people have made first videos and they all sound so natural, but I'm not quite sure how to go about it. So I'm going to be a bit rambly, I'm going to be a bit not confident, and there's going to be a lot of pauses that I'm hopefully going to edit out. But we'll do it. I'm Panerra. Not like Panera bread, because I'm British. But Panerra. I've been drawing since I was 12 years old, and I used to draw Minecraft fan art. This was before Minecraft was as big as it was. I hope that gives an insight as to what kind of character I am, and hopefully it's not a bad insight. I didn't want to just make an introductory video. I wanted to help myself a bit by giving myself a project and making the video about said project, just so that I was a bit more natural, I guess. For a couple years now, I've loosely streamed. I've done like a couple occasional streams, and with it, I used this PNGTuber that you currently see on screen, made by my bestie, who I will leave the links for in the description, but I'll also showcase him on screen. He made me this PNGTuber, and for the 4 or 5 streams I've done where I was drawing, I've been using this PNGTuber, and I love it, but I wanted to have a go at making my own VTuber. And I'd made PNGTubers before. They were okay, but I wanted what you see online, those 2D VTubers that look 3D. And I could make a 3D VTuber, but I actually enjoy drawing a lot more than I enjoy 3D. That is what brings us to the start of this video. Way back when, at the end of 2025, I took a leap and downloaded Live2D, the free version, and had a go at making my own VTuber. This character that I used was a character I made when I first started drawing furry art. It was meant to be like a persona, very edgy looking, but I wanted to change that a bit, and I remade it in 2025, hoping to give his design more meaning and understanding, because his design was just, oh, I want this, oh, I want that, and it didn't really make much sense in a character perspective. So I decided to revamp the character and instead make him like an Oni wolf. So it made sense why he had like the tusks. I understand that creating a persona, you can just basically do whatever you want, but I wanted a bit more substance and understanding as to why the character looks the way he does. From this concept, this really initial sketch, I decided to base my first VTuber off of him. I have a habit of whenever I start a project or start learning a new hobby, I decide to do the hardest thing I could possibly do as the first subject, which is great for me in that I really throw myself into the deep end, but it means that the product that eventually comes out isn't maybe what I'd been hoping for, because I hadn't really learnt properly the method behind the madness. Case in point, the knitted blanket I made as my first knitting project, which turned into a small sofa cover, or the lino cut I did for a friend of mine that was like the most intricate and hard lino cut you could do for probably your first lino cut. But I was a bit smarter with this VTuber. And originally, when I sketched him out, I started with the whole body. But as I went on, I realized how much is going to need to go into it. And I cut back a bit and focused instead on the torso up. Because the face is the main part. That's what people are looking at when they look at your VTuber. On screen, hopefully, I'm showing the VTuber I made and him in action. It was a real struggle trying to make the VTuber that I made. I wasn't really sure how to make his snout move left and right and make it look natural. It was quite difficult. And so this was sort of a leap into what would then become a full dive into making a VTuber. So I made that VTuber and I rather liked it, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna make a proper one. I'm gonna make myself a proper persona that I can use for streaming, and one that will look good. I start all of my projects by scrolling through Pinterest or scrolling through social media and getting reference. I'm starting from scratch. I decided to look around and see what kind of species I wanted to make myself and what kind of aesthetic I wanted the VTuber to have. Here is my mood board. The first thing I thought about was which species I'd want to be. And you'll notice in the mood board, it's predominantly cats and felines. That's because I feel like I associate most with felines. I mean, my current PNGTuber is a tiger, and tigers are one of my favourite animals. I feel like it isn't really me. I wanted to make a Sona that would be me, because all of my Sonas so far don't feel like me. So instead of going with the tiger, I was more looking at like a cat. Then we moved on to the clothing of the character. What do I want them to wear? Well, I personally really like cyberpunk and tech wear and sort of that e-boy aesthetic to clothes. I try and dress that way in real life, but, you know, it doesn't always turn out as good as the Pinterest pictures look. I wanted to focus on physics with parts hanging off of the clothes. That's quite a common feature in techwear clothing. And I wanted a futuristic, modern clothing look. Next, we looked at what kind of persona I want it to be. Because traditionally I draw semi-realistic proportions, but I have always been fascinated with Kigurumi personas, and they sort of have very anime eyes. I was like, a Kigurumi would be the perfect mix of what I want. I want to give it a character, like I want it to be expressive, but at the same time I want it to look like the animal that it's meant to be. I decided that I would use Kigurumis as a kickoff point for my character. So next I start my sketch. I initially did a small headshot on my iPad. I was like, if I get a quick initial sketch down, then it will tell me what I like about the features I've added and what I don't. In my initial sketch, I gave my character really long hair, which is similar in a lot of the Kigurumis that I was looking at on Pinterest, and I gave him some horns. I liked these features, but having the long hair, I felt like it wasn't really the aesthetic I was going for. And so I took this initial sketch and instead made it much more stylized in a way. During this sketch process, you'll notice that I did the face, and I was pretty happy with the face. I didn't really want to change from that, so I used the face to then draw out a couple different versions of hairstyles, and I sent those to a few close friends and asked them what they thought would be best for the VTuber, and went with what they were going to decide. I moved on to making the body and deciding what exactly he was going to wear. When I made my first initial VTuber, he had like a crop top on, and I really like the look of that. I decided to do that on this character as well, except with this character I knew that I wanted to be able to remove the clothes if I wanted to, just to give it a different look so that it wouldn't be the same appearance every time I'm on stream. During uni, whenever we would get concept art projects, I would always gravitate towards the blue, yellow, orange color palettes. I think it's such a nice look. It's really calming to me to see those kind of colors, and I knew that that's kind of what I wanted for my VTuber. I knew that yellow would be my predominant color. It would be my unique color in the color palette, so the focus was on grays, blues for his body and his main clothing, and then I'm using yellow as the accent colors where needed, such as like the lines on his cyberpunk style neon markings on his face, those glowing yellow eyes that I feel help his face stand out more. In terms of his markings and the colouring, I went specifically with the Maine Coon cat that was featured on my mood board. I really like the look of that Maine Coon, and I know that if I was a cat, I would hope to look as regal and as cool as that cat does. I completed the initial sketch, and next was time for the rigging. And I'd rigged the previous VTuber, but still I kind of needed help going through it, and I followed a specific tutorial that I found helpful, which I'll link the playlist for the tutorial below, but I'll also like showcase it on screen what tutorial I followed. And along with that, I followed different tutorials based on what additional things that I needed for my VTuber, because I knew that I wanted to be heavy on the physics. Like I knew that I wanted things to be moving when my character moved, and I wasn't quite sure how to implement that. So I watched a lot of tutorials about hair physics and physics to do with the jewelry of the character and physics to do with the straps on his arms. Once I watched a few things about the physics, I sort of got a hang of how to do it. And when it came to making my VTuber, for the earrings, I did those by myself. But things like the straps, I looked into how people worked with physics in order to get that going. Anyway, I finished my main rigging, and then I decided that since I had some leftover time of my trial, I wanted to try and implement a moving arm that could move whenever my mouse moves. I think it turned out really well. There's still some things that are a bit iffy about my rigging and about it. I think it's just something that will come along with practice, and I kind of hope that maybe I'll be able to do some more VTubers for people in the future. But for now, I need to sort of brush up on understanding cutting and the way I've got to cut my characters. Overall, I'm pretty happy with how he turned out, and I feel like he's going to be a great new feature to my streams whenever I stream drawing. I want to thank everyone for sitting through this video. I know this might not be the most interesting video, but I'm always interested in watching people's work processes and seeing how they go about making something for the first time. And I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you maybe got to do some of your own projects while watching. Thank you very much. Bye bye.